Okay, there we go. All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We will be getting started in just a moment. A few housekeeping pieces. If you have a question, please save your question for the end of this presentation. You can write yourself a note and then input it into the chat, or if the presenters want people to unmute at the end of the program, they will prompt you to do so. I will be monitoring my email as well as my private chats on Zoom. So if you have any issues or concerns regarding any tech issues, feel free to send me a message. This session will be recorded and it will be placed on the RCLS YouTube channel. You'll receive a follow-up email from me, probably tomorrow, with a link to that recording. As well as if you would like a CE certificate, you'll just go ahead and respond to that email. So without further ado, because it is just after 2 o'clock and we have so much information to learn from our presenters, I will turn it over to Baron, Christy, and Sue, who will go ahead and introduce themselves and we'll get it going. So thank you. And thank you to the presenters.
Thanks, Jen. Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a good afternoon. As Jen mentioned, we're here today to talk about creating and keeping a library of things. So most important thing to start off with, and that's who are we? So my name is Baron Angel. I'm the librarian and program coordinator from the Florida Public Library in Florida, New York. That's out by Warwick in the south of Orange County, for those that don't know. And I handle a little bit of everything out there. I've been there about 3.5 years. I have a hand in the programming, the collection development, pretty much anything that goes on in the building. We're a very small library. I'm the only MLS on staff, so I do a lot, including working with our library of things. And I'll let my compatriots introduce themselves.
Okay. Hi, I'm Christy Blanchette. I'm the assistant director at the Valley Cottage Library. I've been at the Valley Cottage Library for at this point, many decades. And I'll be the assistant director for about 30 more days. We're counting down. I was recently appointed the next library director. So upon his retirement, I'll be moving up to that position. Go ahead, Sue.
Hi, everyone. Clearly, I'm from the Newburgh Library and I do technology here. We're just starting our library of things. So when I had the opportunity to join Christy and Baron, I've learned so much with our just practices. So I hope that you guys take out a lot of stuff as well. So that's it.
All right. So we'll go ahead and move along. So we're going to be talking about a number of things today. The way this structure is going to work is we will go through a topic. Each of the three of us will comment on the topic as it pertains to our specific library and library of things, and then we'll move on to the next one. That way you're not effectively getting the same information like 3 times over. It's just a more sensible structure. And thank you to Christy for coming up with the structure idea, by the way. So why did we start a library of things? What items are and are not in our library of things collections? How are these items circulated? We'll talk about both processing, linking, things of that nature. How are the items displayed and stored in the library when they're not checked out? What kind of promotions are we using to make people aware of these unique collections and to help encourage circulation? And how do we handle damage, missing components, the cleaning of items, and anything with regards to maintenance of the collection that you wouldn't ordinarily have to deal with if you're working with, say, books or DVDs. So we're going to start off each talking a little bit about why did we start a library of things. Out at Florida, the main impetus was our recently retired director, Madeline Felino, who was the director for about 20 years here. She had heard about library of things collections at many other libraries, and she thought it was a wonderful collection idea, especially because no one else in Orange County was really tackling this on this kind of a level. And she felt that it was something that would both benefit our local community as well as the system as a whole, if and when we opened it up to the whole system, which we since have. And we started off with some smaller collections that we had. We already had board games. We already had Playaway Launchpad tablets and a few other things. And we sort of increased it from there. And we received a grant from former Senator Jen Metzger's office, which was a big help, as well as donations from our friends groups and a few local donors. and we were able to really get it started, and it's going well so far.
So for Valley Cottage, we started with e-readers, with the introduction of Overdrive to the library system. I don't even know what year that was, but I'm going to say it's around 2009 or so. We quickly realized that our library staff needed access to e-readers. So we obtained some e-readers for our staff to use, as well as I think there was one distributed through the library system to all the libraries. But once we were done with them, we sort of were left with like, well, what do we do with these? And that's where we got to the idea of like, well, maybe we should share these with our community, because if we didn't understand how to use Overdrive and e-readers, our community doesn't as well. So we started with circulating e-readers. From there, the idea sort of grew like, well, what else would people want to use, but maybe not necessarily want to own? And we started, the first thing was our tech trading post, which sort of was aiming at gadgets. We got a kilowatt reader. We got a GPS navigation for the car, because at that time, a lot of cars didn't have GPS navigation built in. We found that was very popular. So just sort of those extra things that people didn't want to invest in themselves, but sort of wanted to tinker around with. From there, it expanded to what we ended up calling our community closet, which was intended to be all of those items that you might use every once in a while, but didn't want to store in your space. So whether it was cake pans, which is where we started, that you only use one time a year to celebrate a particular holiday, or it was just for a young child's birthday and you don't need your Thomas the Tank Engine cake pan anymore. That's where we started thinking about those things that were more occasional use or novelty use that our community might want to use. So it's expanded to many other items from there, including a karaoke machine and lawn games and I'm getting lost on what else we have in the collection, but a lot of a pasta maker, things that you might want to play with, but aren't necessarily everyday items. That's it for me. Go ahead, Sue.
This is going to be hard to be last and try and be original. So we're very interested in the idea of try before you buy, as well as trying to find items that would be something that you would use just once, or maybe, not very often, that you don't want to buy. And in that same vein, especially very expensive items. So we're looking at things like crickets and that sort of thing that you can loan out, that somebody can try, see if they're interested in, and then they can go to Michael's and buy their own cricket. So we're looking at that type of item. We haven't really started yet. We've created a survey where we asked the community what they might be interested in borrowing. And I'll show you guys that a little bit later.
All right. So what items are in our collections? Starting off in Florida, I think out of the three of us, Florida has the widest variety in our collection. We have a lot of different things. We tried to cover all kinds of our bases. These are just a general summation of the categories. We have arts and crafts materials, including knitting looms, which you can kind of see one of those here. We have a pumpkin carving kit for that sort of thing. Entertainment options, I already mentioned. We have board games, we have Launchpad tablets, we have a lot of outdoor games. We have like a combination badminton, volleyball, like 5-in-1 set. We have all kinds of things in that area. I'll show you some more in a moment. We just got a few wireless hotspots. Those have been pretty popular since we got them. We have a wide array of gardening items, from standard garden rakes and hand tools to soil sifters and all kinds of things you might need in that area. We have a lot of, well, not as many as Valley Cottage, but we have a good variety of kitchen items, mostly some basic pans that you might use. We don't have a lot of the fancy character-based pans that Valley Cottage has had the opportunity to develop over the years, but we have a standard small loaf, larger loaf, things that, again, you might use occasionally for an event or a party or a holiday, but that you might not need all the time. And a lot of other things. Our tool library in particular, we have not just regular hand tools like hammers and screwdrivers. We have power drills, table saw, circular saw, that's what it is, a circular saw, and all kinds of other things. And I'm going to take a moment here to actually, this is something we really wanted to show off is what we have. So I'm going to turn off the screen sharing for just a moment. And I'm going to re-screen share after I open this to kind of show off, because we definitely wanted to show off our collections in a little more detail, since that's certainly a highlightable thing here. All of our collection items can be found on our website. If you go to floridapubliclibrary.org, there's a Library of Things button right here in the tab at the top. And all of the items are, I should probably actually screen share so you can see what I'm talking about, huh? That would help. Let's try that again. Where is the window? Here we go, over here. There we go. So floridapubliclibrary.org, Library of Things is right here on the top of the page. And we have details about how our collection operates, which we'll talk about when we get to the circulation portion. But arts and crafts, again, loom sets, the pumpkin carving kit. We also recently got a Singer sewing machine. It's small, it's portable, it's not that heavy, comes in a carrying case. So great if you need to do some textile repairs around the house, clothing and otherwise. Entertainment wise, we have Little Bits coding kits, which are a lot of fun for kids and teenagers. They can download the software that goes with this and just code all kinds of cool, unique things that they can put together, both with lights, sounds, all kinds of fun things to understand how the coding transfers into what actually happens in the real world. We have these ones are coding kits specifically based on franchises. This is a Star Wars droid you can put together and actually drive around remote controlled using the tablet. You can get an Iron Man gauntlet that you can program to do cool stuff. We have mini video game consoles, the NES and the Super NES, the board game collection I mentioned before. We also have an Xbox 360 and our outdoor games, Bocce, Giant Jenga, all kinds of outdoor games that you might be interested in. Like I said, gardening items, hand rakes, shovels and hand tools, loppers, pruners, bone saws and folding saws for cutting branches off your trees and large plants, post hole digger, again, weed whackers, leaf blowers, even a little cart lawn buddy so you can haul things around your yard if you need to. Again, we just got the hotspots. That's a new thing we just added. Kitchen items, we have a large coffee urn. If you're having a party, you want to serve coffee to a lot of people, that can be a great usage. Actually, it didn't end up getting used, but somebody from a neighboring library actually borrowed that the other day for a Secret Santa party. So there you go. Sport blender on the go, spiralizer if you're into zoodles and things of that nature, chocolate melters, all kinds of pans and things for cakes and whatnot. I mentioned some of these already. Pressure cooker, this was actually donated to us very generously, so that's great. And then miscellaneous, we have fishing rods for kids and adults. We have ukuleles are very popular, both again, kids and adult sets. We have those kilowatt things that Christy mentioned Valley Cottage also has. We have a pop-up canopy, calculator, paper shredder, metal detector, binoculars. Just trying to put in a wide array of items that people might want to use that they might not have around. And again, all the tools from jumper cables and battery maintainers to saws, caulking guns, general tool kits, carving sets, winches, tin snips, crowbars, sledgehammer, extension cords, lights, anything, saws, drills, anything you could really need. We pretty much have it and you can come get it. So it really is a wide array of things that that we have available, and we're very proud to be able to offer that many different things. Let's just switch the screen share back over here for just a moment from current slide. And let me just adjust the share back over to here. There we go. And yes, as I said, these are sponsored by former Senator Jen Metzger's office, Mark and Victoria Apple, a couple of patrons made a generous donation, as well as the Friends of the Library. So just a very wide array of items that we've tried to have for things people might want to use, they might not have around the house, they might not want to spend money on, or they might not know they want to spend money on it, they want to see how it works first. Those are kind of the different things that we have available. Christy.
Okay, so as I said, we started with the e-readers and expanded to the gadgets from there. And then we started getting a little bit creative. And once we had the idea of the community closet idea, that's when we really started getting a sense of what we really wanted to include. We did start with the cake pans. And the most successful thing we did was we put a call out in our newsletter for donations. And let me tell you, we got donations. We must have received about 40 or 50 cake pans from families who, like I said, had made that Thomas the Tank Engine cake, but their children were now in college, things like that. So we have a lot of the traditional character cakes, as well as I think we must have had a house that was full of firemen, because we have a lot of fire trucks and fire men cookie cutters and things like that. So the donation was a great start to the collection. From there, we started trying to think about other things we could include, and we moved on to the outdoor games, which have been very popular. So we have a giant Connect 4, we have bocce, we have something called Moki, and those are all just sort of games where you might like something new to try while you're outside. Croquet. We have the karaoke machine was one of our first unusual things. And we also then started a karaoke CD collection that can be borrowed by anybody, but we're sort of meant to be paired with the karaoke machine. I had mentioned at one point, I think to Baron, that we have 2 nursing homes within Valley Cottage, and the karaoke machine is super popular with the nursing homes. So you could think about other communities or community groups that are meeting. Those are the types of people who might use something like that. The movie projector and screen, it's a large outdoor movie screen with the projector that you use for outdoor things. That was always popular, became particularly popular in COVID times when people doing more things outside. Then it expanded to board games, which I know is very popular in libraries. We got a lot of donations there as well, writing to game manufacturers. They sent us a lot of games that way, as well as things that we've purchased. We have done the knitting collection. We had a staff member who was an avid knitter. So she developed and devised the knitting collection with needles and knitting apparatus, which I won't even begin to tell you what they're for or how to use them. But people who are knitters would know that there's like yarn winders and things like that. I probably should do what Baron did and show how we have them organized on our website. That photo that you see there is our binder. This is how we have our patrons looking at them, and maybe I'm getting a little too.
Yeah, let me drop the screen share so they can see you. There we go.
Okay, so we have a binder of all the. This is how patrons coming into the library would see our objects, and I think more will be shown on that when we do the display part. But it basically has everything in this binder that somebody could flip through. So if they want to know what cake pans we have, they go through the binder, and then we have. I'm gonna do what Baron did and follow up on the website. Hang on just a second and I'll share that on my screen.
Absolutely.
Hang on. There it is.
Yep. Also, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to drop the links to our respective websites in the chat down here, so that if anybody else wants to check that out, they can.
So we organized it on a LibGuide. So we have everything here, bakeware, and we tried to do, some pictures from the community we have in there, some how-to things we'll accept in our donations, things we won't, and then all of the individual items that we have in the collections are linked here into Enterprise. When we were able to put pictures up, we did, so you can get a sense of what they look like. And then we have our outdoor games. These ones I linked YouTube videos with them, so you could see, not only do you see what the set is, but you can understand how to play it. Museum passes, which I think most libraries have, we included on here. Board games and small appliances. So you can see we have a pasta maker, we have a pasta drying rack, we have a waffle iron. The waffle iron came from one of our teen programs. I think they did a Will It Waffle program and then donated the waffle iron to the collection. Food dehydrator, some novelty pancake pans, ice cream maker, pizzelle maker, chocolate fountain, things like that. So this is how we organize them there on the website. So I will stop that now because I think I'm getting a little ahead of our outline.
That's okay. Also, as someone who does teen programs, I'm writing that down.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that was, I think, may have been Joanna Goldfarb who did that here, so you can.
Yeah, that sounds like a Joanna thing, I believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so go ahead, Sue, I'm done with this portion. I think I have to just stop my share.
Yeah, just stop the screen share and I'll put
Hang
the
on a
PowerPoint
second.
back up.
Why isn't it giving me the option? I can only do a new share or no share. There, stop share. Got it.
There we go. Okay. All right, we'll jump back over here. Moment, and let me slide, and then let me do the new share over here. There we go. And moving on. Sue.
Okay, so I'll start with the seed library, which you can see there. We partnered with our core Newburgh, and basically people can come in, sign up. We have a QR code right on top that people can scan and sign up to be part of the seed club. They can go through and borrow up to 5 seed packets, and when they're done or when they want to come back, they can also scan a different QR code to donate seeds. So it's very much up to them. There's no hands-on for us really at all. So that's been fairly popular. As far as other items, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can you stop sharing, Baron? Or?
Oh yeah, sorry. Also, can we just note, by the way, how beautiful that repurposed card catalog was painted and decorated by local Newburgh artists? That is gorgeous.
Yeah, I think it was Ed Manning, I think.
Okay.
Just to give him credit. Oh, that's my survey. Hold on. I think I have to just go to this other tab. Sorry. So we also went with the LibGuide idea. So because we haven't really purchased anything yet, we started to look at things that we already had and how could we circulate them better. So one of the things that we have are a number of backpacks, children's book backpack kits and adventure backpacks that Jason, our former circulation advisor, had put together, hiking backpacks. So we decided to start putting those on the guide as well. And I went through and put a pipe Z on each one of these records. There's like an early literacy backpack record, and with a pipe Z, I'm able to separate them so people can now go through and choose whichever one they want to borrow. Before we just had like one record, and when you placed a hold, you got whichever one popped up. So the other thing that we did was just we have some video game stuff that we've just had for programs that we're going to start circulating as well. And I think we're going to look at some musical instruments, things like that. I think that's about it.
All right. Let's go ahead and go back to the PowerPoint. This share. Let me go up. Where is the rest of mine? Move this over here. From current slide. Okay. And then let me switch over to the full screen share. Zoom, everybody. All right. So. All right, come on, go to the next slide. What are you doing? There we go. All right, so what items are not in our collections? Part of putting something like this together is obviously much like when you're dealing with books and DVDs, you can't buy and carry everything. And across the board, we've collectively made what we found were some very similar decisions with regards to what the limitations were of items we were willing to add or not add to our collections. And we're going to talk about some of those a little bit.
Baron?
Yes?
Sorry, I still see what items are in our collections.
Oh, let me see. Is it not? Oh, okay. It didn't do the new screen share. Sorry about that. There we go. Did that fix it?
Yes.
Okay, my apologies. So what items are not in our collection? First of all, commonplace items. Again, if it's something that the vast majority of people are likely to have, it's probably not going to circulate because everyone already has it. So you definitely want to avoid anything that is too commonplace. One thing we found out in Florida was we had bought a lot of our items based on what we thought people would use. And then specifically with regards to our gardening collection, we actually went and had some meetings with some local garden clubs and talked about what was in the collection. And some of the feedback we got was that a number of the things that we had were things that anybody who's even a basic level gardener would already have, and we're probably less than likely to go out. For example, a basic trowel and hand tool set. It was pointed out that if anybody's gardening, that's the first thing they're going to buy. So it's very unlikely that that would be necessary for somebody who is doing any kind of regular gardening. So that's the kind of thing that you want to remember and consider, not just for in general, but if somebody is specifically doing the activity that this item is geared for, are they likely to already have this? Because if they are, you're not going to get circulations on it, and it's not necessarily a good use of your money. Big things that are difficult to store. I'm sure most people here have limited space in their libraries on some level or another, because that just goes with libraries. So anything that is oversized or hard to fit, obviously, you're going to be less likely to want to have that. Once upon a time, someone asked us for a wheelbarrow. We weren't going to do that. That's why we got that little mini cart that you might have seen when I showed the gardening thing earlier, because it's small enough to accomplish the same goal, but still be easy enough to store. In particular, here in Florida, we have concerns because all of our items are stored in our basement, and anything that's going to be loaned out, unless it's one of the few items we keep on display at any given time, has to be hauled up and down the basement stairs. And that's not exactly easy for some of our staff members. So we have to consider, is this something that can reasonably go up and down stairs regularly to be circulated? Some libraries have chosen to avoid the more dangerous items or things that could have concerns. Obviously, here at Florida, we have power tools, circular saws, drills, things like that. But as Christy will tell you, Valley Cottage chose to avoid those items because their attorneys expressed some liability concerns, apparently. Did you want to comment on that, Christy? Or
No, but basically the rule of thumb is, will it draw blood? And if the answer is yes, then we choose not to get it.
Yeah, it's worth noting, which I'll talk about more in the next section, but we actually have a waiver and indemnification form that anybody who checks out any items in that collection has to sign, so that we are not legally liable if they misuse the items. Like I mentioned, different libraries have different comfort levels with regards to liability. We went through and consulted with our attorneys and compared a lot of other library of things forms that were out there to create a waiver and indemnification form that would legally protect us, so that we can provide these items without risk to the library or the staff with regards to lawsuits and things like that. There are also other legal considerations to take into account. For example, Valley Cottage does not have a metal detector, which we have. They chose not to do that because there are some laws regarding the use of metal detectors, specifically on private property.
I think that was Newburgh, though.
Oh, that was at Newburgh?
That was
okay.
Newburgh, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, when I started to look it up, it became very complicated to make sure you're not on government property or you're not on someone's personal property, or what you could and couldn't keep with a metal detector. So more trouble than it was worth.
And now that Sue has brought that to my attention, when I get an opportunity, I'm going to bring that up to my director, and we're going to, like I said, we have the waiver and indemnification form, so we should be fine, but we'll just take that into consideration as we go forward. But, just keep in mind, for unique items like that, there may be specific legal considerations you have to take into account, not just is somebody liable to hurt themselves, but if this item is being used, what other possible concerns could come up, especially if it's something that people are liable not to be using in their own homes or on their own property. The best thing you can do is, if you have concerns about what items you're adding and how that's going to apply, consult your library's legal counsel, whoever that may be. The best thing you can do is say, this is what we'd like to do. If you want, find some other library of things collections like ours that have already done this. You can share our forms and our sites to let them take a look at, and they will advise you specifically as to what they feel with regards to what will keep your library legally protected versus what you can do that would help your patrons without bringing that liability. I think, yeah, okay. So how are the items circulated? Obviously, a lot of these items are unique shapes, sizes, have multiple pieces. So there's a lot of circulation considerations that we have to go into in regards to making sure that we can keep track of everything. Here in Florida, we try to keep the items in the carry cases they come in if that's possible, if they come with one. For example, the sewing machine, the power tools, those sort of things all came with their own carry cases, the outdoor games as well. So we keep those in those cases. They're designed for them, and it's the easiest way to store and transport them. But for a lot of items that either come in a cardboard box that we felt was liable to get damaged, we put a lot of the items that would fit into these plastic bags over here. They're very sturdy. You can buy them at Brodart, Demco, what have you. They sell them in a variety of sizes and colors, and they're really just very sturdy. They zip closed, and they can hold a bunch of items together, making it very easy to keep individual items parsed and separated. Each of those bags will either have a barcode on each of the items in the bag, or if it's not practical to put a barcode on the item, for example, with a cooking pan, we will attach one of these luggage tags with a binder ring, and it will have the barcode and relevant call number information on it so that that can be easily scanned. And if there are multiple pieces, we'll have, say, 2 or 3 or 4 barcodes here and even on the other side of this tag, so that we can go boop, 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 and scan each one to make sure that all the items are there and that everything that needs to be there is there. Generally speaking, when we link these, we've used an I-type of Equip X3, which we had Martha Sullivan specifically add for us for that purpose. And the home locations are based on the individual item. For example, everything in our tools collection is under the RCLS record called tools in all caps. Same thing with gardening tools, that's on the record that says gardening tools. And for anything that was different or unusual, such as the sewing machine, we had RCLS specifically we added a caps record and it had an RCLS customizer record for us so we could add it on there. So for example, sewing machines, we had one added that's specifically sewing machine that we could add on there, SM1, 2, and 3 for the 3 parts of the sewing machine. Each of the items has a little alphanumeric call number here. For example, SM1 for sewing machine. All the tools are under T, so on and so forth, just so that each collection can be easily identified on our website and in the catalog. We have a policy that whoopsie, I didn't mean to do that. Hang on, go back. There we go. We have a policy that we do not generally allow holds on our items. If you want, you can call us on the phone and we will put it aside for you for a few hours. We'll let you know if it's there, but we do not allow any holds through the system. That's why it is an I-type status. Mostly because it's simply too unreasonable to expect these kind of items to go through the delivery. And there's risk of damage. It's inconvenient for the drivers. It just wasn't going to work. So items must be picked up at Florida and returned to Florida directly. That being said, anybody from any RCLS library can use this collection. It is not limited to Florida patrons. You just have to have a valid adult Florida RCLS library card and bring it to Florida, and we will be happy to check the items out to you. And again, we have that waiver and indemnification form and also a borrowing policy that we ask everyone to sign when they take an item out, and we store that in a binder behind the desk with their name on it. And we keep track of those so that we know that anybody who's checking those items out has signed those forms. Right now, we have a policy where we make them re-sign the form each time they check an item out so that we have a current one. Depending on the advice of your attorney, you may find that you can have them fill it out once and it covers everything. That's dependent on your individual legal counsel's advice. And I will go ahead and go to the next slide, and I will share a link to our indemnification form in the conversation while Christy is speaking.
Okay, so we have similar sort of strategy to Barron. Most of our cake pans and cookie cutters are put into plastic bags. You can see them there in the picture there. They are, one of the other pictures on a further slide will show you, they're actually hanging up on a wall in one of our storage areas. That allowed us to get them up off the floor to make them easy to find. The system where we shelve them, there's 3 rows of racks. So A is the top one, B is the middle one, C is the one on the bottom, and then they're just numbered numerically across the way there. The A, B, C really is size dependent, with A being a shorter distance between the racks, so that's where mostly the cookie cutters are. B is mostly the cake pans, and then C is like some larger items like a muffin tin that would be bigger than a traditional cake pan. We also ended up having our Z collection, which is items that we have in bags like that, but are too heavy to hang. So we have some cake pans that are cast iron, and the infrastructure of the bag wouldn't necessarily support that hanging. So we definitely have some stuff in bins on the floor, and one of the later pictures will show that. When possible, we circulate our items in the original box. So our coffee urn, for example, is in the original box it came in. All the sides of it have been reinforced with like book tape, and to keep it as, you know, a decent enough circulating condition as possible. We do try to get our, when we purchase our lawn games and other objects, we try to get them already with bags. A lot of them are sold that way, so we try to opt for things like that. I do have a bocce ball set right here, and it came with this lovely bag. So that was very helpful in terms of being able to store it as well as circulate it. It's all contained in this space. There have been a couple of occasions where we've had to purchase bags and things to fit items, and it's worked out mostly well. For example, with our Nintendo Switch, we purchased a bag, a carry bag for that, as well as the Wii that we circulate. So we purchased sort of aftermarket things for that. We did, in the beginning, we had them with no holds allowed on anything because of not wanting things to go through the delivery. We've now limited to equipment L, and we don't really find that they're showing up on the pull list. If they do, we just call that library or person and say that we can't send it through delivery, but they're welcome to come get it here. And that's allowed people who are waiting for a particular cake pan or something to come in to have the option to put a hold on it. So we did change course, and we changed it to allow holds. So do I have another slide, Baron, or is that it? Maybe I should also address on the left-hand side of the slide, there is a page from the binder I showed before. This is what we have in-house that people can come in and browse. They're organized by different general categories, the same as on the LibGuide. So cookie cutters, cake pans, games, gadgets, e-readers, small appliances. So that these categories match the categories we have in the LibGuide. The little number in the upper left-hand corner of each photo there then allows the staff to find it easily in the storage room we have. And then I'm not sure, I don't remember, Baron, is there another slide for me, or am I done?
Nope, you're good for this section.
Okay, so I'm all done. Over to you, Sue.
Also, it's worth noting, while you're seeing a lot of the pictures here of like kind of generic castles and things, they also have all kinds of character pans from Elmo to, you know, who knows what else down there too. So if your kid's a fan of something in particular, they probably have a pan for it.
Yeah, this is true. And a lot of the characters were donated. I sort of opted in the beginning not to, and I don't know that I have a reason why, not to buy any of the sort of commercial character pans. I bought more just the generic objects like the castle, like soccer balls, trucks, things like that. And the character pans we have all been donated. So we have Harry Potter, Elmo, Minnie Mouse, things like that. They're all donated ones. So I'm not exactly sure why I opted to shy away from them, but I think it was an endless slippery slope. But we have them in the collection, but from donations.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine concern there would be outside of things like Sesame Street and Harry Potter that are at this point eternal. A lot of times the characters come and go, and suddenly something's no longer popular. You've got a pan no one wants anymore. So, all right. Come on.
Yeah, I'm not sure I had a slide because, oh, maybe I did.
You have a slide. I gave you a slide too. Give me some credit.
Yeah, so what Christy and Baron said. Okay, moving on. Yeah, so it's our intention once we do start circulating items that they'll be open to everyone in the system. And we'll probably do the same thing that Christy said, where, you know, if it shows up on the hold list, we'll just give them a call and tell them they have to pick it up in Newburgh. Our book packs, backpacks do go out in the delivery, so anyone can place a hold for those. This is just our seed library procedures so that you can get an idea of how that is done without us really touching anything. That's really up to the patrons to give and take. And I think that's about it.
All right. Yeah, worth noting, by the way, we also at Florida have those Sprout backpacks, not the hiking ones, but the kids backpacks that Sue talks about. We just don't usually consider those part of our library of things, which is why I didn't mention them, but we also have about 4 of those that are very popular too.
It's nice to have a picture of them, you know,
yeah,
so people can see what's in them.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so displaying and storing the items. As you can see on the right here, we also have a book, much like the one Christy was showing off over there. I am not in my office, so I don't have ours with me to show off. But we kind of did it in this one of those put together books where the metal clips hold it together in the middle rather than a full binder. But really, it's just printouts of what I showed you off of our website divided by category. You can see a picture of each of the items. It's got a basic description, and you can kind of see what's available. One thing I didn't note, by the way, on that website, if you click into the link and you look on the website, each of the names of each item on the website, if you click it, it will redirect you to that item record in Enterprise so that you can see whether the item is checked in or not at any given time. And I believe Christie's LibGuide does the same thing with their items. So that could be really helpful.
Yeah,
In terms of,
well.
yeah, Newberg's as well. Yep. So they're all set up that way. So with regards to displays, we're a very small library. We don't have a lot of display space. So we've kind of have two areas that we're using for this. This area in the bottom left picture is actually behind our circulation and everything else desk. And we just sort of have some shelves dedicated to showing off some of these items. We have the tablets here. We have some board games. There's a couple of the coding kits. There's a ukulele up here. That bag laying down is one of the battery chargers from the tool collection, but you can't really see it. There's a ratchet set over here, a kilowatt EZ over here. These are the NES consoles in carrying cases that we bought for them. And we rotate out the items that are on display periodically so that different things are being shown off, the things that are small enough to be put on a shelf to show off anyway. And also on the other side of the library, over here on top of our display cases, we put a few more items along with this beautiful sign that we also take to outreach events when we're going. We've loaned it to the Warwick Repair Cafe, who has been working with us for quite some time, ever since we got a Libraries Transforming Communities Small and Rural Libraries grant through the ALA to help expand this collection. And they've been helping us promote that. And that sign kind of shows off some of the things we have, and we put a few items next to it. The chocolate melter is there if you're a fan of melting chocolate, or a fondue, great item. There's one of our knitting looms and a few other things here, so people can kind of look at some of the items and see what they include and kind of show that off. And this book is kept right on our front desk, right when you walk in, right up to the desk. There's the one book containing all the Library of Things. The red book here contains all the board games that was made up before the Library of Things fully came together. And the orange binder on the right has all the Launchpad tablets, so people can scroll through any of the books to see what's available and make requests for those items. With regards to storage, as I mentioned before, all of our items are stored in our basement except for the ones on display, because we are a tiny library. We don't have closets. They don't exist. You know, we have a couple of storage cabinets, but really everything is in the basement. And thank goodness for the basement, because otherwise we'd have no place to put anything. But we have these two cabinets down here, which contain most of the items, most of the tools, and well, I should say most of the cookware is over here, and some of the larger tools are on the bottom, the ukuleles and some of the more unique items. The right side, we have the coding items up here, and then mostly the rest of the tools, along with a few other odd and ends in here. And then on this shelf to the left is all of the outdoor games. They're stacked here. The shredder is on top here. And then that blue on the left is the pop-up canopy that we loan out. And you can kind of see between the cabinet and the shelf, the board games are on that little rack on the bottom. And then it's hard to see, but behind this pole here is this garbage can where we have all of the large lawn items, such as the rakes and the shovels. And also this gigantic monstrosity, which is a set of loppers for tree branches that extends up to 14 feet long. And it's not easy to move around the library, but we get it up and down. And all the cabinets are labeled 1 and 2, and so we kind of have a general idea of what's in cabinet 1 and what's in cabinet 2. So if somebody asks for something, we can go down, find it easily, bring it upstairs, and check it out to whoever's looking for it. And then when we check it back in, bring it back down. So that's we found that organization has worked for us so far. And again, going back to that reason why we're trying not to get anything too overly big and bulky, it's because it would have to come down here and be brought back up. So we're trying to watch out for that. I think the largest thing we have is our, not the can jam, the other one, the big square one, where you throw the bean bags in the hole or on the target, that one. I think that's the biggest, heaviest thing we have. And we've managed to get that up and downstairs okay. So that's kind of how our items look. Christy.
Okay, I realize I'm going to backtrack a little bit to some of the storage items for how we circulate them. In our cake pans that you see there on the left-hand slide, as well as the cookie cutters, we have included a laminated card that includes our barcode over on this side here, as well as like a general picture of the item, as well as the finding location and some general circulating items in there. That's what allows us to circulate them, because as Baron indicated, you can't put a barcode on something you're sticking in the oven. And all the cake pans come with a lot of times with recipes and things on them. This has a recipe in the back for how to cook it, or ideas of how long you have to cook for this particular pan, because sometimes the shape of the pan will very much impact the cooking time. So we've laminated all the sheets because we're under the thought that people are going to put the cake pan back in the bag while it's still wet after they wash it. So we tried to hedge our bets, and everything inside is laminated. The other thing we did, and this was more of a result of experience, is that we bought little notebooks that we've included in every cake pan that says share your baking tips. This one doesn't happen to have anything written in it, but some of the cake pans are a little tricky with how long you have to cook the items. And people have shared interesting tips. Like we have one that's actually a turkey and the head is really small, but the body's really big. And that requires a little bit of maneuvering in terms of how long you bake it. So we found that people start sharing their items, or the way they've included it, or they've filled it with a particular filling. So it's been kind of a cool way for bakers to share their ideas. So those are just, we bought these little notebooks at the dollar store, again, threw it in a plastic bag so that if it ends up with a wet cake pan, it doesn't get wet. So that was just a little add-on to the how we circulate them item. And then all of the other objects have a luggage tag that includes the barcode on it. They're a little less tricky than the cake pans. But on to storage. As you now know for sure, the cake pans and cookie cutters are in hanging bags. The heavy ones you can see at the bottom of the picture, they're up there at the bottom. Everything else, we have things displayed out on this table. In the middle picture, we have a table where we try to catch people's attention as they walk in. It's the first thing you see as you walk in the door. So we usually include seasonal cake pans there. This one's recently, we have some of our Hanukkah cake pans, as well as some winter snowflakes cake pans out there, as well as the binder that you see there in the background of all the objects. And we found that having the stuff out on display was really the trick to circulating it, because people have no idea, as much as we promote it, put it on the website and tell people about it. It's when they actually see it that they get interested in borrowing it. And then on the right-hand side, you see some of our clever adult services staff have integrated the Halloween cake pans and with their scary storybook display. So we found that's another great way to get attention, where people are like, oh, cake pan. And you can't really see, but the little orange stickers on there say something like borrow me, because that's inevitably a question that people have, like, can I borrow this? So we found that the actual display of the item is a great way of getting people interested. And then the storage bags for these items are then kept at the circ desk. So if somebody comes up to the circ desk with the snowflake pan or the pumpkin pan, the circ desk has the bag right there to match it. Otherwise, the closet items are being retrieved by our reference staff, and that's mostly dependent. It's mostly because of where the closet is located. Okay, so you can move to the next slide, Baron. Okay, so this is our board game collection. This collection may move, but it is currently on a low shelf that's right behind our information desk. And it's all of our board games. They're presented in alphabetical order, and they're all out in the open. People can just pick them up and browse them right there. They don't have to go through the binder to access the board games. We are looking at moving them because they're growing and they're quite popular. You can go ahead, Baron, to the next one. Okay, and this is our little, what we used to call the periodical storage room when we used to store periodicals, which we no longer really do. But that's where the cake pans are in here, as well as all of these other objects. Some of them, as you can see in the picture on the left, are on the shelf. The thing in front that says Quest, that's the bocce ball set. There's the pasta maker, the Wii Switch are all up on that shelf there, but then a lot of things are on the floor. So in the foreground on the left-hand side is the giant Connect 4. There's no way you're putting that on any shelf. And there's the food dehydrator, things like that, the movie screen, they're all on the floor. And they get a little bit trickier in terms of how to organize them, and how they're organized is usually dependent on what's checked in. But there's not that many, and they're all in like clustered in one spot. So staff usually just rustle through it a little bit to find what they want. So there's not a neat way to store objects of differing dimensions, but we sort of have them in this out of the way corner. I think that is it for our slides for Valley Cottage. I can't hear you, Baron.
Double muted.
There you are.
We found the same thing. That's why we initially started with those 2 cabinets I showed, and we had to buy that extra shelf to put all the big outdoor games on, because we realized they were just piling up on the floor and everything else. So we bought that shelf to physically put them on, because there was so many of those big, bulky, awkward items. Also, one thing I wanted to mention with regards to the cooking pans, we found, because we did want to make sure that we identified the items. So with the cooking pans, our head of circulation, Ashley, actually took a razor blade and carved our initials into the bottom of each of our cooking pans, so that we could easily identify that they were ours without having to like put a sticker on them that would easily burn up in the oven. All right, let's see. So, and again, Sue, if you want to talk about it, you can, but I know that a lot of Newburgh's items, other than the backpacks, which you saw the display before, they're still in development, so they don't really have a lot of this set up just yet. Do you want to add anything, Sue?
No, I don't think so. Do I have a slide here? Because I just want to talk about the survey.
I did not do a slide with the
Okay.
survey. I apologize. But if you want to link the survey, talk about it, go right ahead.
Yeah, can I just share my screen for a second?
Yeah, sure. Let me turn this on, sir. I'll go for it.
Okay.
I should have added a slide for that. I apologize.
No, we had enough to do. I can't get to my top of my screen. All right, never mind. I can't get to the survey. It won't show up in the top of my screen. So, I'll just do it the long ways.
Yep.
This is my library of things stuff.
There you go.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. So this is what you're learning. Like, there's always a way. It's sometimes not the easiest way, but there's always a way.
Absolutely.
Here we go. Okay, so when we first started, we started with a survey asking for suggestions. And otherwise, I just went through like other libraries and other ideas for what people had. And then asked our patrons to, check off what they might be interested in.
So you're not screen sharing.
Oh. Sorry.
It's okay. I did the same thing earlier. It's Zoom.
I'm new at this technology stuff. Honestly, Zoom is not my forte. Can you see it now? Okay.
Yes, you're good.
Okay, yeah, so what we found was the most popular thing was our Cricut. And now we have to decide, okay, so if we buy something like this, a sewing machine or a Cricut, do we send it with some supplies? Do we, send it with instructions? I like the idea for the notebook, because if we send it out, people might put tips for crafts that they've created off of YouTube or something like that. We're also looking at, something like Creative Bug, where there's public performance rights on the software, so that when they run a webinar, you can actually put it right on your calendar for patrons to enjoy. I also want to do lots of demonstrations, try and get community folks to come in and give demonstrations on how to use like a GoPro or a drone or a Cricut, things like that. So that's our idea for how we want to promote it later on, once we decide which one of these goodies we want to put in the collection. That's it.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. I see you had art listed on there. That's kind of cool. I don't know if you know, but once upon a time before you came over there, Newburgh used to actually have an art collection.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that definitely came up, you know, to see if people want to borrow other people's art and share it at home.
I mean, I think if it were reproductions of popular art, I think it would go out. Like I'd borrow, you know, Van Gogh's Starry you had there, put that on my wall for a while. All right, so how are the collections being promoted? Obviously, if you have these unique collections, you need to let people know that you have them and entice them into borrowing the items. As Christy mentioned earlier, one of the best ways is to show off the items. If people don't see the items, obviously they're not going to be excited to check them out. So social media sort of goes without saying, but you want to, like some of the images I showed before on my slides, we have those pre-made pictures that, and the ones I showed kind of generically showed off a little bit of everything, but we have specific ones for certain areas of the collection, one that's all cookware, one that's all tools, and so on. And we'll put those out on social media to remind people about the interesting things we have. And whenever we get new items, we'll make up a new one of those. Our marketing person, Debbie Violetta, was great with that. She will send out a new slide saying, hey, check out the new items that have recently been added to the library of things to let people know what's there. And our technology person, Annette, handles the photography of all the items so that there's high-level photographs that we could show off so everybody can see the items. Newsletters can be very important, whether you're doing them digitally or on paper. Obviously, you can talk about the collection. You can have a section where you talk about the new items, things like that. Flyers of bookmarks in the library are great, as well as, of course, the binders, as Christy and I showed, having that listing of items that people can look through and go, oh, look at all these things I can check out. Always great. But also we have and I don't have one, I should have brought one home with me, but we have a bookmark in our library. It's about a half sheet size, vertically cut. And it's advertisements on the front talking about what the collection is, and on the back, just a very basic rundown of all the items that we have in the collection. And we hand those out constantly. We are constantly printing more. People love to have that list handy to know what we have available. So that could be really great to just have a quick and easy, here's a list of generally what we have, maybe not each and every specific item, but just covering the majority of here's what's available and telling them to check the website for details. That can be a great way to let people know as well. Your websites, again, we all have either on our websites directly or in LibGuides. We've shown off all the items. We've linked them to the catalogs, put all the details. People can browse to see what's on there. The collection listings in the library, that sort of goes with what I was saying before. Displays in the library, as Christy was showing off, and especially if you can integrate them with other displays of books and other items that you have, it makes them seem like a more normal part of the collection. But because it's not something people see every day, it draws their attention and they go, oh, that's different. And then you see a little label, check me out. And it goes, oh, cool, I can check that out. And that really gets people's attention. Like I said, a lot of our display, because of limited spaces behind our desk, which, yeah, people will see it and go, oh, what's that? But I think we get a little less interaction on it purely because it's not out in the public space as much as others. And that's why we put those few items on our display cases to try to get a little more attention on it out on the floor. And events and demonstrations that are focused on the use of specific items, these can be great. Christy, I think you were doing a little more of that than I was, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, one of the things we realize is that, as much as we display things, we need to get people excited about the collections and really draw some attention to it. So about 5 or 6 years ago, we started doing during National Library Week, Cake Wars. And we focused on using the cake pans that we had in our collections. We had a staff category, we had a patron category, and we had a kids category. I had meant to send Baron a picture, but I didn't. But we had, probably about 10 to 12 entries every year. and we display them in our gallery along with the pan that was used to make it. And during the course of the day, anybody walking in the library could vote on which one they liked the best. It was just on looks entirely. And then at about 3:30, because we were always waiting for the kids to be out of school, everybody would come to the library and we would cut and serve of them all. And we would have huge crowds. I want to say probably about 100 people each time. And we had very little cake left over at the end of the day, which was great. So it was a really good way to do something with the community and to also involve people in a National Library Week event, because for a while we found that National Library Week was sort of languishing and So it was a great way to kind of cross promote all different things. Obviously we haven't done that because of COVID, but we look forward to its return. I'm going to be optimistic that we'll be able to do so maybe in 2023. But things like that where you can kind of integrate the collection into the event, I think really made people excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I could say I handle teen programs primarily, though I do some adult and kids programming here and there. And we did a few things with our baking pans where the teens were able to make up some recipes and bake a few things to try the pans out and kind of get a feel for how that all works. So we found that worked out pretty well too. And I know that a lot of our tool library items were used by my coworker, Beth Verblau, who does a lot of our children's programming. She did a whole lot of building programs with the kids to sort of show how to use some of the basic hand tools and demonstrate how all these different things can be used to build things and to kind of get that audience into it. And for some of the older kids, even some of the slightly more advanced tools to at least show them how they work, if not let them use them themselves. So that went really well too.
Yeah, I don't know how effective this is going to be, but I'm going to try to show a picture off my phone of our.
Hang on, let me end the stop share so they can see a little better. There you go.
So this is from 2019. Here's the cakes all set up in the gallery, and I just want to see. I don't know if this is very effective, but we had some real stunners of cakes. It was a mouse with some yarn balls.
That's awesome.
Right. So that was just a more traditional pan, but it was
so cool.
A very big event. Here's the crowd having at the cakes when we were serving it. So
wow.
I'm sorry I didn't give you actual.
No, that's all right. That happens.
So hopefully that was at least useful enough to see the event designed around our cake pans.
Absolutely, that's great. But I imagine that's a little bit harder in COVID times.
Yeah, we're not even going to try it.
All right, let me go back to the presentation over here. All right. Sue, did you want to talk about promotion at all?
I mean, we'll definitely be on social media and newsletters. And like I said, I'm hoping to do pop-up events. I used to do pop-up emerging technology events before COVID, where people could come in and try the VR goggles and, things that they wouldn't normally be able to try or experience at home. So that was so much fun. And even things like iPads and pencils and things just to try. I mean, if you go to a mall and you go in an Apple store, you see people, it's just packed. I'd like the library to be like that. I'd like to have stuff out for people to try and touch and see. And, I'm also a big believer in self-directed instruction. Here's the stuff, here's the YouTube videos, have at it, see what you can do with it at home. So those are pretty much our ideas as well.
Okay, that works. All right, go to the next slide. Okay. Handling damage, cleaning, missing pieces, because these are very unique collections. Obviously, if you circulate books and DVDs, sometimes you're going to have pages falling out, water damage, cracked cases, things like that. It can be a little more complicated when you're dealing with these kinds of items because obviously there's a wider array of possible issues and the repairs are not always as straightforward. So, again, generally speaking, I think our libraries are all sort of on the same wavelength here, but we'll each talk about this a little bit. But each item has a replacement cost. Here at Florida, at least, if the item has multiple pieces and we can replace an individual piece rather than the whole thing, then if an individual piece goes missing or is damaged, we will only bill the user for that piece rather than rebuying the whole thing. But if it's a piece that we can't easily get or replace that is essential to the use of the item, we will have to bill the entire item. But if it's possible to avoid it, we will. Also, it's worth mentioning here because I don't think it got mentioned in the circulation section. With regards to certain items, we don't include extraneous consumables that might be necessary for the usage of the items. For example, we don't include any yarn with the looms. We have a sander in the tool collection. We don't include sandpaper, things like that. If it's something that is relatively inexpensive that's required to be used with the item, that would generally be something you could not return to us. We do not include that with the items. So that's the kind of thing where you would have to provide that on your own when you got the item. It's expected that items will be returned clean and in good condition. At Florida, if an item comes back, particularly with the cooking pans, and I don't think we've had this happen yet, but if an item comes back and it's not clean, we will ask a patron to take it back home and clean it. And if we don't catch it upon initial return, but we realize it's dirty later, we do what we have to do. We'll clean it up. Somebody will take it home and throw it in their dishwasher or whatever we have to do, and we'll get it cleaned up so that it can go out again. But we do try to encourage everybody to bring the items back clean and in good usable condition, if at all possible, and with all the pieces, of course. And primarily this sort of thing, you have to really deal with on a case-by-case basis because each item is going to be different. For the board games, for example, a lot of board game companies, notably Hasbro, actually sell replacement pieces for most of their games. So you can actually order those pieces in order to get something that might have gone missing, whether it be a card or a little plastic token or what have you. You can sometimes get those. Or alternatively, our board game Sorry, and this was even before we started loaning it out because we had these games for programs for years. We actually have our Sorry pieces, our 3D printed replacements. We actually did that before we started circulating it. And so that's a really great way to, if you're having plastic tokens, if you have a 3D printer, you can get replacements that way. Chrissy, do you want to touch on how this reflects on your side?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. I think we worried more about the missing pieces and the dirty cake pans than in reality is happening. A lot of the items are really, people are taking pretty good care of them. We did recently have cornhole, like Baron was mentioning earlier. Somebody ran over one of the beanbags of lawnmower. So like things like that will happen. We were not able to get a replacement from the manufacturer, but we did buy a replacement set of beanbags from Amazon and just billed the patron for the cost of it. The board games and whatnot, we don't check every single piece every time they come in and out, although there is a standardized indication of the pieces on a board game, even though it's on the box, but every box is different and it's maddening to try to find it on some. So we standardized it by rewriting it, putting it on the inside lid. We have volunteers. I think all of our libraries have teenage volunteers who need hours, and we will set them up with the board games and have them count the pieces and tell us what's missing. We don't have the expectation that our circulation staff will handle that because it's nearly impossible with the other volume of stuff they're doing. And then of the cake pans coming back dirty, it's happened very rarely that it happens. People seem to be taking pretty good care of it. So I know that's one of the big concerns of these types of collections, but it doesn't seem to be a large problem with the collection from our experience, which is probably about 6 years running.
Yeah, we found the same thing with the board games. I have a description with the pieces and the barcode on the lids of the boxes for all the board games so that they can be easily identified. And that seems to have worked out pretty well. So far, we haven't had a lot of concern with missing pieces. We don't strictly check it that harshly. If somebody returns it and says, hey, we were playing this game and noticed this thing you need is missing, then I'll deal with it. But that really hasn't come up at all. It's been pretty good with all the items and pieces staying with the game as necessary. Yeah, that's a great idea, having team volunteers check it, though. I'm going to keep that in mind.
Yep.
And we don't have nearly as many. We've only got about 14 games, although we have a few new ones I haven't added yet that I need to put in. Let's see. Yeah, and the other thing, obviously we have some of the more dangerous items that might be difficult to troubleshoot, saws, drills, things like that. It's expected that most people on our staff aren't necessarily going to be able to at sight identify if there's an issue with one of these items. So if somebody reported there was a problem with this, we have a great volunteer. His name is Bob. He's with our friends group, and he does all kinds of repairs and things around the library when we need him to, ranging from physically fixing stuff to, even dealing with computer issues because he worked for IBM for many years. So if we had a problem with that kind of item, we'd probably put it aside and let him look at it. So if you're getting those kind of items and you have either somebody on your staff or somebody in your friends group that's really good with tools and mechanical items, maybe enlist them and just see if they were willing to be on call. If something came in that needed to be looked at, you could just let them know, and when they get a chance, maybe they could deal with that if you're dealing with those kinds of items. Sue, what about on your end? Any specific plans for how to handle this?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't really do anything unless someone pointed out that something was missing. But I also like the teen idea, every now and then just going through everything to kind of see where we're at. We're lucky enough to have a laser oven so that we can put any technology in there to get screens and the outside cleaned of any germs and things like that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so we're lucky for that. And I mean, I'm going to have to hand touch every device that comes back and, clear it and make sure it's ready to go out to the next person. But those are just the considerations we've had so far.
Absolutely. And as well as part of our borrowing policy that we do make everyone sign when they check the items out, it does mention that they are liable if things come back damaged or otherwise have issues, that they may be held responsible for those costs. So they're aware in advance that that is something they're taking on if they check the items out. All right. So we're at the questions portion. Before we do the questions, I did want to mention one other thing and give a quick shout out because it occurred to me. Just because I'm scrolling through the audience and I see that my friend Amina from Goshen is here. I did want to mention that Goshen is starting to get into this as well. They recently, over the summer, got about half a dozen of those outdoor games. Cube, there's again a badminton volleyball set. There is a few other things. I know they have a really nice croquet set that was donated by one of their board members, and they've started loaning those as well. And well, they haven't gone out a tremendous amount because they got them right at the end of the summer. That seems to be going pretty well for them so far as well. So certainly something also worth checking out.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention board games because I think board games are having a real resurgence, especially after COVID. And
oh, absolutely. I agree with that whole.
And with COVID. So if anyone hasn't played Betrayal on House on the Hill, go ahead and borrow that from Christy because that is such a great game. But there's lots of adult games. I won't be buying Pandemic anytime soon, but
we have that one too. It's gone out.
Look at Root, Mysterium. There's so many great adult games. They're very high strategic.
Absolutely.
You could get together with your grown kids and have some wine. It's not just for kids.
It's also a good event for when we're sort of back interacting with each other in person. Board games are really popular.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I've done programs like that before. I've done a couple of, I did shortly before the pandemic, I did a board game night when we first got the collection to sort of show it off as an announcement event kind of thing. And we actually did it on our big back deck, which we're always very lucky to have. And we put out a bunch of actually, that one wasn't on the deck. That one was actually inside now that I think about it. But we actually put out a bunch of board games. We let people come in. We actually served a dinner. We did hot dogs up on our griddle thing. We had some chips and some salads and sodas, and people could come. They could have a little hot dog, picnic type dinner and play some board games. And I think we had about 5 or 6 families. And for the size of our library, that's pretty good. So that was very enjoyable. And then we did another similar event when we got the outdoor games, showing some of those off outside on the deck. We did a similar thing where we did a hot dog dinner again, and we showed some of those off. And we actually also had some wonderful people from Museum Village over in Monroe come and show off some old school type of games and outdoor stuff as well. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, we have someone going out to one of our library assistants is going out to the Newburgh Brewery to do magic cards. So
nice.
You can always take them on the road too.
Yeah, that's another great thing. Trading cards are also a great program. Shortly after the summer ended, I started a Pokemon card club at the request of a couple of kids in our system, and I've got 14 kids in there every Wednesday afternoon, guaranteed. So it's been really popular since we started, and luckily the Paul, who owns the BP Sports Cards and Memorabilia store right on Main Street in Florida, has been a great partner, providing us with prizes for things for the upcoming tournament we're going to be doing, and also for all kinds of other energy cards to help kids build decks and things like that. So he's been a great partner as well. So yeah, card programs can be great. I know Wizards of the Coast, regarding Magic, we have a bunch of those in our basement because they often give away free card sets on International Games Day for those kind of programs. You could sign up for that sort of thing too.
I just got a message that the RCLS internet went out, so that's why we lost Jen Park.
Yeah, I got the same message.
Okay, so, but there was a question in the chat from Maria asking about, have we ever thought about a different way to catalog the library of things, such as using libcal? I think a lot of libraries did just recently look at libcal because RCLS did a demonstration. The one problem I saw with libcal is it's priced based on the number of items you had. So we hadn't looked at it. We had just renewed our advanced contract, so we have another full years. So that's, we haven't thought about it doing anything differently. And I think it's working pretty well with the LibGuide system. Other than, I think the way they're cataloged in Enterprise and Symphony is I think they're virtually impossible for patrons to find on their own because they're a generic sort of equipment record and or an e-reader record. They're sort of not discoverable by the title. So if you're looking for a particular game, you're not necessarily searching by the title of it. So it's a little bit harder to discover as a catalog search. But in terms of, I don't think libcal would solve that any better than libguides do, I think. That's at least my instinct on it. Another question from Elise that Valley Cottage does do the check-in and check-out Circ desk. But the question is that true at the other libraries? Is it all handled at the circulation desk? Baron, do you want to answer for Florida?
Yeah, like I said, generally speaking, we will at least check it in at the desk. If it's busy, then it'll get put aside in the back. And when we have time to get around to it, we will go ahead and handle that check-in. Sorry, working from home.
Yep.
But yeah, if it's busy, we'll put it in the back and we'll check it in when we get an opportunity. But otherwise, yeah, we handle it all at the desk. And then once it's been checked in and looked through, we'll put it back down in the basement.
Yeah. Did we lose Sue too? Are you still here, Sue? Maybe we lost Sue as well.
We might have lost Sue.
Okay, so we won't know what Sue's doing, although I know a lot of her stuff is yet to be circulated yet.
Yeah, let's see. Mike
So
says,
the next one, okay, you see, Baron,
do you ask that patrons make reservations for bigger items in advance? Our collection hasn't been big enough for that to be a huge issue. If people want to make reservations, they're welcome to call us and say, I'd like to use X item, and we'll put that aside for them. But otherwise, it hasn't been a concern for us. They can, but they're certainly not obligated to.
Yeah, we don't have any such restriction. The little room where they are located is very close to the information desk. It's not like we have to go down to the basement as in Baron's case. So everything is accessible at any time. As long as it's here, we'll check it out to you. Next question from Clarissa. Not sure how many libraries here are fine free, but how are fines handled by each library? We are not fine free on these types of items. I think they're down to $0.25 a day for the items. I'm pretty sure that's what it's actually written on the cake pan thing. Yeah, 25 cents a day for the items is what we're charging. So slightly more than our traditional books, just to sort of segment that it is slightly different. That's what we're charging, and they're just handled at the circulation desk. Baron, do you have something to add there?
Yeah, we're actually we're a little bit higher on that. We kind of try to align it with regards to our some of our other items. Like for example, our DVDs, generally speaking. So our items go out for 7 days, and it's a $2 a day late fee, and for any given items, and that will, much like any other item, build to a certain point before the item is automatically lost, assumed like anything else in the system. So that being said, we're very lenient about it. If someone calls us and says, look, I'm running late with it, can I have a few extra days? As long as no one else has called and asked, when it's coming back or is waiting for it, we're probably going to say yes. We handle it on a case-by-case basis. If people need extra time or if they want to do a full renewal, sometimes we will allow that depending on the situation. We're pretty good about it as long as there's not heavy demand for an item.
Okay. How long do you circulate the items for? At Valley Cottage, we're doing a 7-day loan period. I think that's across the board, but honestly, don't quote me on that. Hang on. Well, the knitting stuff is 28 days. I think that's based on the fact that the projects take a little bit longer. The bakeware is 7 days, and everything else, the lawn games, the e-readers, the karaoke machines, etc., are all 14 days. And we allow everybody 2 of each item at this point, although I think we probably could increase that without any problem to supply.
Yeah, we've done the same thing. Ours are 2 items at a time. Although again, case by case exceptions can be made depending on what you're using them for. And it's 7 days for any given item. And I believe I don't think there's anything that goes out that isn't a 7-day item, because like I said, some of the collections existed beforehand, but I think they were already 7 days. So that's sort of the only thing that would be an exception would be the board games would not be technically counted because they're linked under a different I type. They're games X, I believe. So the board games you could take out. I think it's either 1 or 2 board games in addition to your 2 items from the regular library of things because they're under a different I type. So, and the tablets are linked separately as well. So those wouldn't necessarily apply to the quantities, but everything else would be 2 at a time for 7 days.
I think like with everything in libraries, we tend to be very restrictive, and as experience gains us more understanding, we loosen up, and we certainly did that at Valley Cottage. We did have shorter loan periods and we're more restrictive, and we're loosening up those things as we realize that people are using them in reasonable manners, they're returning them in reasonable manners, and we have enough supply for things. So depends on how small you're starting, on some of your policies you'll apply. Mike just comments that he looked into lending key from OCLC. I don't know anything about lending key, and I'm not sure, Mike, if you care to share anything about it, but that's another option that's being pointed at by Mike.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that either.
Did you care to share anything about that? You can unmute and share, and if you don't, then just stay muted. Nope.
All right.
All right, so Gardner, some of your popular items. Lately, the movie screen and the projector has been really popular. It may be starting to slow down now that we're in the winter months, but that's something that's that, and the karaoke machine are things that we're constantly having people turn over and wanting to use. And the coffee urn, we have a 60-cup coffee urn. Again, it's probably not as popular now as it was before COVID, when people were having groups of 60 people gathering, but those were very popular items in the collection. And our seasonal cake pans. The ones that are less seasonal are less popular.
Yes, with regards to popularity, I think our most popular is the hotspots have been very popular since we got them. We've had people asking about those. But other than that, the gardening items have gone out quite a bit. That seems to have gotten, at least again, that stopped as it's gotten colder and people aren't out doing yard work as much, but the gardening items were definitely going out. The outdoor games were going out pretty well before it got colder. People were liking those. And the knitting looms have been going out more recently pretty well. So I've had some usage of those also now that it's getting colder and people are looking for more indoor activities. So those have kind of been what we've seen going out. And then the Launchpad tablets have always been very popular. They're always asking for those. So
board games did pick up during COVID as well. In the beginning of COVID, when we were quarantining everything, we actually stopped circulating them. And then as we learned more about the transmission of the virus and we stopped quarantining things as a system, then we started circulating everything again. But we found that they're quite popular because people are spending more time at home.
yeah, that's a good point. I'm actually gonna, because I think part of the problem is our, like I said, most of our board games are hidden downstairs. I'm gonna pull the board games out and do some kind of display of those somewhere so people know we have them.
Yeah. Mike shared a link to the lending key from OCLC for us to follow up on. Thank you, Mike.
Oh, excellent. Thanks, Mike. Jessica, I want to know, did either of us do a survey like Sue's to determine what our community wanted? Once we started doing this, we certainly let everybody know we were open to suggestions for things that we needed in our community. We certainly let people know that we were open to donations if they had things that they thought people would like for our collection. I actually had somebody ask the other day who didn't know we had the collection. She said she was in there. I was doing a notarization for her. I'm also our library's notary, and she noticed about the Library of Things, that sign on top of the display case that, oh, we have a lot of items sitting in our cabinets from things that we bought one-off for parties that we're not really using. Do you take donations? And I said, sure, if you'd like to bring us a list of what you have, we'll absolutely take a look and see what we can use. So definitely, that's a great way. We also, again, we had that grant, and as part of the grant that we received, we did a community conversation where we tried to solicit ideas for how we could expand the Library of Things, specifically in relation to people using items to conduct needed repairs, so they didn't have to get rid of things that they might otherwise get rid of, in conjunction with the Warwick Repair Cafe. So we got a lot of suggestions for items that way as well.
There's another question from Jessica. Do items like the knitting looms go out with the directions on how to use them? Absolutely. Everything for us has the directions. Like I said, with the cake pans, we laminate them. We do reinforce them for everything else. The lawn games often have directions. Everything
Yep.
we are circulating with it.
Absolutely. And I actually, for that sewing machine, when it came in, because we know that's complicated, we actually printed the whole, instruction manual out off the internet. It's about this big, and put it in one of those books like the one I showed you, where we have our selection, and we include that barcoded as an item with it so that the whole manual is in there. And I also put a sheet inside the cover advertising the Singer app that they advertise with the sewing machine, where you can select the type of thread you're using, the project you're doing, the fabric you're working with, and it'll actually show you a diagram step by step of what to do and how to do it, which is nice. But yeah, any time of instructions we try to include. We also have some recipe cards with the cooking pans with some suggested recipes they might be used for, things like that. So we try to include instructions whenever possible. But again, part of our indemnification form, it does say that if you check the items out, you preemptively agree that you accept the responsibility for knowing how to use this. So in the event that they don't, that's something that they would have to, they could look up for themselves. And what we're trying, actually, we're a couple of items. We're trying to actually hopefully have YouTube videos that are demonstrations of how to use the items to give people an idea. I've done a bunch of them on some of our newer board games as a fill-in for my teen time program when nobody was coming to my programs because pandemic. So I did a bunch of, and I don't mean the board game, I mean the actual pandemic. We actually did a whole bunch. I did a whole bunch of introductory videos on how to play some of the board games like Munchkin and what I did Munchkin, I did Labyrinth, I think I did. Yes, I will share that form, Liberty. Give me just a moment. But yeah, we did. I did a bunch of different games, demonstrations of games that were some of the newer ones. I did Disney Villainous. Some of the ones, obviously, people know how to play Sorry, Monopoly, Clue. But for some of the newer games, I did some videos, and those were great. And my hope is if I can find people to do it, to get people to demonstrate how to do things using some of the tools and other items, so that there's an example that we can include a link to in there. It says, hey, go here online if you want to see how this works, and they can kind of get an idea of what they're working with. And I will go ahead and put the link to that form.
Any other questions or comments?
There's a link to the waiver and borrowers agreement if anybody would like to. Here, since I know that's not something that everyone else does, let me put that up on the screen and talk about that for a moment while we're here. That way we can, because that is important to cover. If you're dealing with that, I'll show off what we did here. Share. Okay. So this is our waiver and indemnification form. And again, they have to fill this out whenever they check an item out. And it says that the collection is for use by patrons with a card in good standing. And they have to fill their name out on each line here, saying that they are capable and experienced in using the tools and equipment that they are borrowing. And they will use all items in a proper and safe manner and won't allow other person or persons to use the equipment they are borrowing. Obviously, we can't stop them, but if you let someone else use the thing you borrowed, we're not legally liable for that because you broke the policy. They do hereby, on behalf of their successors, assigns in consideration of being permitted to borrow the items, waive all claims, demands, actions, causes of actions against the library and all affiliates, and any damage or damages, injuries they may suffer. Basically, they can't hold us liable for anything. They also hereby agree to release and indemnify from any damage against property suffered or caused by any person which arises or may arise from the use of the equipment, so on and so forth. Then we ask that they sign and date this when they check the items out. And then more straightforward, we also have our borrower's agreement and use policy, which just says you must be over 18 to borrow the things. Prior to borrowing, you have to sign these forms. You're certifying that you are capable of using the item in a safe and proper manner if you check it out. Only the person who checks the item out can use the item. No one else is authorized to do it. Within reason, obviously, if you check out a board game, obviously there's probably going to be other people playing it with you. You can borrow up to 2 pieces of equipment at a time. All other tools and equipment borrowed have to be returned to the library by close of business on their due date. You can only bring them in during open hours. Don't try to shove a saw in a book drop. There will be an automatic $25 fine if you try to shove it in the book drop or if you leave it outside. So yeah, we're not playing around. Everything has a 7-day lending period. We reserve the right to make exceptions as needed. If an item is returned late, you're responsible for a $2 a day late fee. Obviously, like with anything else, if you're over $10, your account is blocked. If things are severely delinquent, overdue, patrons can, if not pay for the item, they can provide a replacement item. We do that a lot with our books and DVDs too. If they want to buy an equal or superior replacement item, they can replace that as well. And we reserve the right to retrieve unreturned tools and equipment as necessary, and the right to forgive fees in special circumstances should that be required. And severely delinquent is if it's more than 2 weeks from the due date. At that point, further action might be taken. You can reserve them by calling us. You have 3 days to pick them up if you call us and ask us to put it aside for you. Most people do it the same day. If they call, they'll say, I'm going to come pick it up in a few hours, but we can't hold it for up to 3 days. But really, you need to call us for that. We don't really do it through the system. We don't renew items, but again, we make exceptions case by case. We're not responsible for anything that's wrong with the items from the manufacturer, any defects, things like that. If anything becomes safer in a state of disrepair, you got to notify us right away and bring the item back so we can attend to that. Everything must be returned clean and must be returned in the same or better condition as when issued, barring normal wear and tear use. Obviously, if you borrow a saw, the blade's not going to be as sharp as when you took it out. That's just goes without saying. And that you agree to report any damage to us immediately, agree to pay for loss or damage, so on and so forth. And then we recently added the additional term specific for the mobile hotspots with regards to how those are working. It's $125 to replace a lost hotspot, $30 for the charge or $20 for the case. Multiple devices can check out to the hotspot. Only Florida patrons can check out our hotspots. We're limiting those to only our patrons right now. If they are overdue, we will deactivate them the day they go overdue. So you will not be able to use it if you try to keep it late. And governed by the same rules as our wireless internet policy, which is linked. And if children are accessing a hotspot, parents or guardians are responsible for that content. We are not. So if your kids are looking at things you don't want them to on the hotspot, that is your problem. And obviously, we're not responsible for any internet's content or data collected or transmitted via the hotspot or any misuse. So if somebody borrows the hotspot and uses it for something illegal, we're not responsible for that either. And again, we ask them to sign, date, print, and we will keep both of these forms on file in a binder behind the circulation desk so that we can reference them if it should ever come up, and that way we have that information. And yes, as Jen said in the chat, links to all of these will be sent out in the follow-up email so that you'll have all the links. Let's see, additional questions here. Jessica said, Christy, can you show the LibGuide of your items again and talk a bit about how the display is organized so patrons can find things?
I can do that, Baron, but before we get off your topic, the one question afterwards is, do you mark the patron as signed those waivers in the record and workflows?
We do not. It is assumed that if the items are checked out to a patron that they have signed the waiver. That's a staff responsibility to make sure they sign the waiver before they're given any of the items upon checkout.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to share my screen now. I think I get what you're getting at, Jessica, about how we organize it. If you look at along the top, we have them organized by the kind of the type of object, but within things like cake pans and cookie cutters, we do not have them organized like Christmas and St. Patrick's Day and Halloween. We thought about it and got down the very slippery slope of trying to do that. Between the binder, which is a static object, having to reorganize that every time we got a new type of cake pan was a nightmare, as well as the LibGuide as well. So we decided to go with the sort of keep it simple principle, so that it's literally just in order of acquisition. Fortunately, as the collection grew, when it was our turn to buy all the Halloween cake pans, they were primarily bought all at the same time. We do occasionally get new things that we add to the collection. So in the binder or on the LibGuide, they are not in any kind of a grouping. And that was primarily to save a lot of work and having to regroup them. Could it be done? Yeah, probably, but we just chose not to invest the labor in organizing the individual item types by sort of more thematic elements. So I think that's probably what you were getting at with the question. If it doesn't answer it, chat away. You got, okay. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing.
Yeah, it's worth noting, Valley Cottage has had their collection longer than Florida. We've only had ours about 1.5 years, and we heavily referenced their LibGuides and their organization when we were putting ours together to kind of get some idea of how we might go about doing this and how we might put it together. So that was having your items there was a great help for us to reference in addition to collections from other libraries. All right, so I see Jen noted that we are running a bit over. So if there's any more questions, we'll take them. But if not, then we can go ahead and wrap it up. And again,
Look
as
forward to lots
and
more things in the system.
yeah, and as I mentioned, by the way, I will put this back up real quick. If you do want to get in touch with us, these are our email addresses. Feel free to send any of us an email to ask questions. We're happy to help with guidance on how to put this together and how to handle all of this. Certainly we can provide that assistance if you want to get in touch with any of us. We are available.
Okay, well.
And thank you everybody for being here. Jen, do you have anything to say in conclusion?
Yes, thank you so much. I apologize. We're having some internet issues here at RCLS, so I dropped off for a few minutes. This is a fantastic session. So Christy, Barron, and it looks like we did lose Sue, but you know, thank you so much for this session, and it was so well attended. I know there's going to be some follow-up questions sent your way, and that's okay.
That's
so
fine.
I will be I will be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow to attendees stating also if you need a CE certificate, please just respond. So at this time, I'm going to stop the recording.